Check. 1, 2, 3.
The
Brief.
This is the Debrief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the
Brief.
Hello and welcome to The Debrief. I am your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
I'm Becky Scarcello.
And on today's show, we have an in-depth interview with a guy who knows a lot about Michigan theater. He is the publisher and editor-in-chief of Encore, Michigan, which he acquired back in 2014. He's also an award-winning journalist. He's worked for USA Today, Business Week, AOL, Huffington Post, a number of others. He's the founder of the Michigan Celtic Repertory Company, and he's the author of 3 books and a musical play. Please welcome David Kiley.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, we're excited
to have you.
Thanks for being
here. Yeah, I think we need, we really need your course on theater. So this is perfect. Okay. I think it'll help a lot of our listeners.
Yeah. I mean, I've always liked theater. I remember doing it back in high school, but I am not knowledgeable about theater in any sense. So I kind of want to get a Michigan Theater 101. Like starting with this, what is the state of theater in the state of Michigan?
Well, I think it's actually very healthy. We've seen a number of new theater companies opening up the last few years. The economy is good. When the economy is good, you see more theater companies open up. After 2008-9, you saw some fold. But since then, over the last 5-6 years, there are new ones. And generally, a new theater company will operate at a loss or break even for a couple of years, get their footing, get their 501c3 tax status, and then they'll start to get members. They'll apply for grants that are available, and they'll get funding that way to kind of keep themselves going. But I think it's a really good time right now, not only for the business of theater, but also creatively. There's new plays happening all the time, and there are terrific playwrights here in the state, and these theaters are doing new work. Most people are familiar with the big touring shows, Broadway in Detroit, Broadway in Grand Rapids, the touring shows that hit the Wharton Center, and those are generally great shows. A lot of people are familiar with the Meadowbrook up in on the campus of Oakland U. A lot of people know about the Purple Rose Theater because Jeff Daniels out in Chelsea. But there's a lot of theaters, there's a lot of small theaters that seat anywhere between 25, 30 people and up to 180 that are, we call either, black box theaters. So they're not big, high ceiling theaters. They're more like big rooms with that many seats. And some of those theaters are in strip malls around the greater Detroit area. And I love going to those theaters because they're doing great work.
Well, give us some examples.
Sure. So I actually just came down from one. I was at the Monster Box Theater in Waterford. And they have a show coming up, The Book of Liz, which is a David Sedaris play. I'm not sure that it's been done in Michigan before. It might be a Michigan premiere. But it's a very funky space. And, if you go up Telegraph, from 696, about 10 miles, it's Waterford's up there. And they are they do very fun work. It's a fun space. They have 2 theater spaces in there. I'm actually involved in a play that's going to be there in January called The Real Inspector Hound, which is a Tom Stoppard play. But very intimate, surroundings, very, very intimate atmosphere. Another one that I like that's doing the cool work is Out Visible Theater in Allen Park. And it's a building where the artistic director actually has like a school and she does classes. Well, I just saw Turn of the Screw there, which is a 2-person play. And the room, I mean, you could fit 25 people maybe in this space. It's like a big conference room. That's how intimate it is. Like where I was sitting, I was like pulling my knees in because one of the actors was moving around. And I've seen David Mamet plays there. I've seen original premieres there. I was in a new play, a New Works reading festival there last spring. Another one I really like is in Trenton, downriver. It's called Open Book Theater, and they have Doubt is playing there right now about the priest sex scandal. It was made into a movie. A lot of people saw with Meryl Streep and
Spotlight,
Philip Seymour Hoffman, so they're doing terrific stuff. The artistic director there, Krista Schaefer-Eubank, won our Wilde Award for Best Actress in a Play.
So tell us what the Wilde Awards are.
It's the Michigan Tonys. Or I like to say that the Tonys are like the New York, or like the Broadway Wilde Awards.
Right, yeah, I think so.
But the Wilde Awards were started about 17 years ago by the founder of Encore, Michigan, a guy named Don Calamia. And the website, EncoreMichigan.com, which I run and where all this is, you find it, it was started by Pride Source Media, which publishes Between the Lines. And then along the way, it got separated out, and then Don was looking for somebody to take it over about 5 years ago, and that's how we got together. But the Wilde Awards, we review, my team of reviewers and myself, review every season about 240 openings.
Wow.
That's a ton.
It has averaged around 240 openings.
And that's how many theaters, roughly?
Roughly anywhere between... it's hard because some are more active than others, but I'm going to call it 75 theaters.
Wow. All throughout Michigan?
Throughout Michigan. So
Upper Peninsula, too? Do they have theaters up there?
We don't have one up there, although there is a Shakespeare festival in Marquette, and we haven't been able to get anybody up there.
Yeah, that's tough.
There's a theater in Alpena. I've been up there a couple of times. It's called Thunder Bay Theater, and that's in our network. We promote and have their stuff. And once in a while, we don't get up there for every show to review, but the shows that are in Southeast Michigan, out to Kalamazoo, and then the summer theaters that are in like Coldwater and Holland. They're very active in the summer, so we cover all of those. And also, there's a couple of theaters in Marine City that are in our network, the Riverbank Theater and the Snug. So we cover a lot of real estate. I think I put about 25,000 miles on my car last
I bet. Now, for someone that's not in it like you, this sounds almost overwhelming. So obviously, there's plenty of supply of live theater to go see. So say you have someone who's maybe just a casual fan, or they've seen a bigger show, but they know this theater's going on and they want to be a part of it. How would you suggest they sort of attack or find what they might like to go to?
Well, I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of, it's a tool on our website, and it's basically a show calendar that is, it's on every page. So, we're taping this podcast on a Monday night. So if you go to our website, you can click on Wednesday or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on our calendar. It will show you everything that's playing in professional theater. And then, if you're unfamiliar with either the theater or the show itself, because it might be a brand new show, when you click on the show, there's a thing called show details, so you can kind of see what it's about, and there's the address of the show, and there's usually a link to buying online tickets. We're the only thing in Michigan that has this calendar that's kept up like we keep it up. Oh,
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of other things kicking around, but it's not they're not complete. Now we do professional theater. We do not list. Yet we're thinking about it. We don't list community theater.
Let me ask a dumb beginner question, and that's, what are the different levels of theater?
Sure. So it's really professional versus community. So professional theater is that the actors are getting paid something. Mm-hmm. Now there's some theaters that are equity theaters, and those theaters have to pay equity union rates. Okay, and those theaters would include the Purple Rose in Chelsea. That's Jeff Daniels Theater. The Detroit Repertory Theater here in Detroit. The Tipping Point in Northville, which is a terrific theater. I recommend that to everybody. Let's see the other equity houses. Well, the shows that are coming through, obviously Fisher, and those are equity as well. So, but what you also get is some theaters are a combination. So you might have an equity actor or two, and then the production might also include non-equity actors. But those actors have to be paid a stipend of some kind for us to actually cover them and consider them for Wild Awards. So an example of a theater like that is another terrific theater in Dexter, a small town on the other side of Ann Arbor, for those who aren't familiar. They have a wonderful theater, the Encore Musical Theater, no relation to us. But they have a combination often of one or two equity actors and then stipends for the rest.
Now, one of the other terms...
Community theater, the actors don't get paid.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. One of the other terms I'll hear thrown around a bit is experimental theater. Like, does different theaters get known for doing different types of plays, or...?
Yeah. I can be funny about this. So... The Ringwald, for example, which is a wonderful theater in Ferndale, they have they're known for doing a lot of shows, not every single show they do, but a lot of shows with a gay theme, LGBTQ angle theme, something, right? Not every show, but I've seen wonderful stuff. They've won Wild Awards often. Experimental theater, it is a bit of a broad term. There's, I've seen there have been stuff that's come up where they're performing in a large house instead of a theater, and they sort of move the actors and the patrons sort of room to room. That's a fairly experimental.
That's weird.
That would be
cool. I would love to see that.
Immersive.
Yeah. But yeah, it's experimental it's usually somebody who's just flat out going to try a new structure, a new just something that's unconventional. Doesn't maybe necessarily have 2 acts and an intermission. It's maybe it's here's one. There's a small theater. They're very intermittent in their production, but somebody told me they put on a play, which I didn't see, where they marched all the patrons into an non-electrified barn in a farm field, and it was a bit of a, I would say horror was what I heard about it, but I mean, there were bats, there were bats, there were actual bats in the barn, and it was nighttime, and it was so that's kind of an experimental.
Was that Erebus by any chance?
right.
That's fairly experimental. But I encourage anybody who likes theater, come to our website and take a look at what's there, because it's fine to support and go to the biggies, and Broadway in Detroit. It's a great program. We're going to have Hamilton next year, and School of Rock and Book of Mormon and Chicago, and all those are great. But these other theaters, it's a completely different experience. For one thing, in a lot of cases, you're feet away from the actors and what's going on instead of maybe in the balcony. That's a completely different story, or experience.
Can you talk a little bit about the acting pool? Like, is it a real lively bunch of local actors that are able to do this, like, for their job?
I'll tell you, we have a terrific acting pool here in Michigan. We really do. It's a combination of equity actors, a lot of equity actors, and they're good, because they're very experienced and they're able to get their equity points. So, that's a good solid. And a lot of them, they make their money and earn their living from doing voice acting, commercial acting. I mean, the automakers, they cast when they're shooting commercials here, cast out of that pool. But even the non-equity actors, it's been every once in a while, but it's not that often that I go to review a play and the act, and there's a really crappy actor, the directors are also good. And so they're casting, really good actors. And now that I'm starting a theater company, it's a small one, but because I've seen everybody, I know every actor.
Yeah, you could probably handpick who to cast.
I only auditioned for one of the 5 parts that are in the first show that we're doing because I knew exactly who I wanted. I mean, I see 70 shows, in a year probably. So
wow,
how many shows are these actors doing in a year?
Well, some actors that I'm thinking of that are non-equity. They're in an almost constant state of rehearsal or performance, right? Because they love it. It's their passion. I mean, I think of one actress who's, I know her day job is in a movie theater.
Yeah,
but she's in a constant. She's single and she's a wonderful actress and she's in a.
You can name names, by the way. Don't be shy.
Well, I without permission, I hesitate a little bit. But another actress I know, she has a studio, vocal studio, like 40 students, but she gets cast in musicals because she's fantastic.
Did the fact that the film credits went away in the state of Michigan have an impact on the actors in the theater scene?
Well, it made it harder for the actors making a living in Michigan to do that. I didn't agree with that whole thing about rolling all that back. Even if it's, I don't think it really cost the state money. If it didn't make us money as a state, it still created industry and jobs and attention, having films filmed here. I mean, Detroit and Michigan can use all the good press it can, it can. And being the set and the setting for these kinds of movies was good for the state. So.
Yeah, and you're not just talking actors, talking the catering companies and all the techs.
Yeah, techs and carpenters and electricians and all of that.
Local restaurants. Yeah.
You mentioned some of the playwrights coming out of this area. Can you talk a little bit more about them?
Well, there's one who that I'm thinking of right off the top is Josette Elmyra, who is practically the bard of Michigan at this point. He's written a lot of plays that they've been performed. I know often at the Williamston Theater in Williamston, which is an equity theater, I think. Yeah, and a terrific play. Well, one of the things about theater that I love about the Williamston, the Purple Rose. There's one I haven't mentioned yet, the Dio Dinner and Theater, which is a dinner theater, and they do wonderful stuff up in Pinckney. When you put a theater that's doing such good work in these downtowns of small towns, it draws a lot of people. I mean, over the course of their season, and it also just shines a light in a way that almost no other kind of business that's going to go into, you know, a storefront, or in the case of the Dio, for example, it's and I highly recommend that experience, but I can't recommend it enough. It's right in Main Street in Pinckney. The tickets, I think, are like $45 for the show and dinner.
Wow.
You know, it's a buffet dinner, and, you know, it's always enjoyable. It's their specialty is fried chicken. And
So this is a good way to make a weekend out of something, right?
I mean, absolutely. And but anyway, like so Josette Elmyra, Brian Cox is another Michigan playwright, and that's just, you know, coming to mind. But it's wide open. You know, it's very difficult for a writer, for a playwright, for example, to get their work done in New York or Chicago. But there are playwrights that have formed these relationships with some of these smaller regional theaters, and Josette Elmyra has got his plays picked up by one of the syndicators now. So now they get done. You know, elsewhere around the country.
So how does that work? If
Yeah, I
I'm
was
a
gonna
playwright
Yeah.
here in the Detroit area, what do I do, and how do I get started, and what's the career
To
path?
sell,
The career path would be to enter, you know, write a play, and then enter. There's a lot of play festivals. There's some here in Michigan, and there's some out of state. And so the first thing you want to do is you know, go on the internet and see where the play festivals are. They have submission periods. Get it read, and you can also pitch. You can pitch plays to the Detroit Rep. You can, you know, to even to the Purple Rose in Chelsea. And they'll get read. They might not get done. But you know, and in my case, I wrote my first play last year. And
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. It was based on a book that I collaborated on, a World War II story, and you know, I rented a theater in Ann Arbor, the Arthur Miller Theater. I marketed the show, sold ticket. You know, I had 3 performances, and I paid to have it videotaped, so I'd have a permanent record of it. And another theater picked it up after I did it, and I'm still working on some other theaters, because it's sort of timely to the 75th anniversary of World War II, which we're in the middle of right now. So
a private theater, they can either buy a play that's out there, or they could have a playwright come and do a play for them, say, or how does that work?
Exactly. So you license a show. For example, the Open Book we talked about, Open Book Theater in Trenton, they did Doubt, or they're doing Doubt. They're in the middle of that, and I forget who the licensor of that is, but there's a handful of them. Samuel French is a big one that owns the rights to, or they manage the rights, I should say. And so typically it will cost a theater $75 to $100 a performance to rent that show.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Reasonable.
So, exactly. Yeah, it's not that expensive. But in some cases, like the Purple Rose, they do a combination of commissioned plays, which they'll work with playwrights to write a show that will premiere there. I mean, Jeff Daniels writes some of the plays they do there, and some other Michigan playwrights. They used to do a lot of Lanford Wilson plays, and sometimes got in some cases premiered Lanford Wilson plays, I believe. But they're also they commissioned. I know they're working with a playwright that wrote a Sherlock Holmes play, and it was so successful that it was a new play. It was so successful they commissioned two more Sherlock Holmes plays to have done over the next couple of years because they sold the house out for 2 months. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Is there politics involved in Michigan premieres? Because I've actually seen some, I don't want to say nasty, but some
Rival.
Facebook posts going back and forth between theaters.
Oh yeah. So what happened? Here's what can happen. So, when there's a new play, okay. Maybe you get to run in New York or something like that, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time before they make the play available for regional areas, like we have here. And so you deal with whoever's handling the play, and you book, you lobby them and say, hey, I want to be the Michigan premiere for this play, and do it in it's such and such time. Occasionally what happens, and when you do that, by the way, there's usually a fence around that production. Another theater can't do it within a certain
There's a radius clause, right?
Radius, exactly.
I used to book radio shows, and we used to have the same thing for bands, that if we wanted them to come play our concert, they couldn't play anywhere else in the area for a certain amount of time.
Right. Occasionally, theaters bump into each other on this. And that's what maybe you've seen play out on Facebook a couple of times. I'm trying to remember some specifics, but I know the Slipstream, for example, in Ferndale, which is a very cool little theater. It's you have to GPS the address because it's not on Woodward. It's off Woodward a bit, and it's in a building that when you drive past it or look for a parking place, it looks a little like it might be a dental office or an accounting office, but inside there's it's kind of a house inside, and then attached to the back of it is, I think it was like a garage, like a mechanic's garage or a plumber's thing or something like that. But it's a nice high ceiling, big space, but probably holds about 40 to 50 people at a time max. Again, these intimate venues, I can't recommend people who haven't tried this before. I can't recommend this enough as a different kind of theater experience. Now, Slipstream, I would consider Slipstream an experimental theater. You mentioned before. They do one of their specialties. It's not all they do, but one of their specialties has been doing adaptations of works that are in the public domain. So adaptations on Shakespeare, adaptations on Oscar Wilde plays, modern takes. They also do original stuff. They have a young man who he's 20 now, I think. And he's at the University of Michigan. Max Vinogradov is his name, and he wrote a play about Tennessee Williams, about the life of Tennessee Williams, and he won a big award at the University of Michigan, and then and the Slipstream performed it, and then it also performed in another little theater in Ann Arbor called Theater Nova, which is in a space called the Yellow Barn, and
I've been there. I've done comedy there.
There you go. It's used. But it's used for a lot of different things. But Theater Nova puts on, I think, about 4 shows a year. Terrific plays. We've nominated them several times for Best Play since I've been running Encore Michigan. In this past year, they won the award for Best Play. So it holds like, I don't know, you've been there, it holds like 50 people, 60 people, maybe something like that.
But you're right, you get an intimate experience when you're in a place like that.
You really see people's expression. And I think it also cuts down on audience distraction, because a lot of times you go to a concert or a bigger show, not everybody's paying attention. You know, I would think it's a little easier to keep people in it when it's a small group.
But you're all, and you're also seeing just a very different kind of theater, right? When you go to, first of all, I'm trying to think, all of the Broadway in Detroit and Broadway Grand Rapids have been musicals, right? It's all big musicals.
I'm
Mostly,
thinking
yeah.
So if you want to see a
Yeah,
play,
Wicked and-
which I do, I love going to see a play. You want to see a play, this is where you got to go, and it's wonderful to see. Think about seeing a play like 12 Angry Men, for example, in a theater that holds 50 patrons at a time. It's the jury table, 12 jurors,
Right.
Are like 10, 12 feet away from you.
Right.
I mean, it's
compelling.
It's magical. Listen, I'm one of those people. I think live theater is magic. I just do. It's also where you see, in my opinion, the best acting. Because you really good, honest actors will tell you, acting on film is barely acting, because you're just going. It's an editing process, because you're acting in like 20-second, cuts.
Yeah.
And then it gets all, put together. You got people, giving their hearts and blood on the stage, and especially over the course of a long run, like Purple Rose Theater, their runs are like 2 months long.
Wow.
And and with one exception, in the last 5 years, and this is actually an interesting point I'll touch on. With one exception, they've been mostly sellouts, like 95% seats sold over the course of 2 months. The one exception to this, and this is kind of leads me to make a point that I'm worried about, actually, with theater. So Purple Rose, a few years ago, they had a play called 2AZ. And it was written by a Michigan playwright, and it was about the zombie apocalypse. Now, I'm not a zombie guy. I'm not. It's not a genre that I particularly like. Mm-hmm. But I really like this play. It was really well written, really well acted. But it's the subject material scared away the bread and butter patron base of theaters, which is
kidding. I'd totally go see a zombie play.
Well, but hang on. Would that you would have come, because when you go to a theater, I hate to say it, a lot of times, 80% of the patrons are over 50.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm maybe being generous on that. Younger people have not been drawn to the theater in the numbers I would like to say. They're not biting so much on live theater.
Why is that, and what would it take to change that?
Well, Purple Rose took a chance on a theme that they thought was going to attract younger folk, but it didn't. And I don't want to say, I think it was a marketing issue, frankly, but it's also, when you go to the City Theater, they bring back Evil Dead, every
seen that,
year,
yeah.
right? It's not my cup of tea, but that's okay.
There's a lot of blood.
Yeah, but
There's a lot of
it's
blood.
just that genre of show is not so much my cup of tea. But I'm not sure exactly if it's the subject material, or that they're not seeing enough relevant subject material, or if live theater is just not their cup of tea. Now, I went to see a play at Wayne State, at the Hillbury. Antigone was the name of it. It's an adaptation of Antigone. And it was brilliant. And young actors, students, obviously. So young actors, and a very and I guess because it was Wayne State, there was a lot of young people in that particular audience. But it was set in the streets of Chicago, and there was a lot of hip hop and that kind of content in the show. So So I think the word got out. So the opening that I went to was, there was a good amount. But when I go to Open Book or Dio or not so much the Ringwald and Slipstream, they get it, but they're small. They only hold about 45 people. There's young people there, but these other ones, Tipping Point, they're I don't know if it's the price of the ticket, which at Tipping Point in Purple Rose is around it's $35 or $40, something like that. The audience is mostly over 50. And here's what I can't figure out about theater, and I'm not sure. I don't know if when the baby boomers die out, if we're going to have a crisis in theater, or whether Gen X and Gen Y and millennials will gravitate to live theater when they get over 50. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's
I wonder if it's almost like a commitment issue, like so many other entertainment options. You can kind of wander in and out. Like you can meet people here, whatever. And, our culture now where you don't have to be somewhere on time because you can just text the person or whatever. Right. I wonder if it's something like that where like, oh, I have to be there because it starts and it's dark and I'm there for 2 hours. Like, I don't know if I'm going to want to do that.
Yeah, I think it's all of that.
Yeah.
I think there's 100 reasons why, why younger people aren't gravitating to live theater. But I also think it's an awareness issue. I think if I could get more and more people to come to our website, EncoreMichigan.com, to see the breadth of stuff that they're not aware of. I think that's the issue. Everybody knows what's coming to Detroit, and Grand Rapids at the touring shows. But how many people outside of Trenton and, the downriver community, part of the reason awareness is a problem is that, the news and the free press and MLive and what's left of traditional media has largely, not completely, but largely turned its back on theater.
Yeah.
And the arts in general. The Kalamazoo Arts Council, I know, had me in a couple of years ago because the Kalamazoo paper, which is part of MLive, wasn't covering arts anymore, and so they were going to build their own website. Now, look, it's a business decision. When MLive in Ann Arbor, for example, sees that a review of a play gets 175 clicks and something else gets 1,000 clicks.
Right.
It's a business decision.
Right.
One of the things I tell journalism classes when I'm invited, the single biggest change to journalism is analytics, is clicks. I write for the Forbes platform. They actually publish a number. Like you find my story on Forbes. They publish the number on how many views it's gotten. Like you see it.
Oh, wow. You
see whether or not my story that you're now reading got 1,000 views or 50,000 views. It's a, so mainstream media is going to put the content in there that the greatest number of people want to see. Mm-hmm. Public service has gone out of mainstream media.
What is the state of theater education here in the Detroit area?
We have fabulous, we have a thriving program at Wayne State. We have a thriving program at University of Detroit Mercy. We have a thriving program at UMich, Michigan State, Western, Kalamazoo College. What am I leaving out? Oakland U. Has a terrific program. So we're blessed with a lot of theater. We're blessed with a great bullpen of talent coming up in these thriving theater programs. So we're blessed. We're blessed with a lot of great theater. I just again, it's an awareness issue, mm-hmm. I think, with a lot of theaters and getting their word out there. It's we do it, Encore Michigan, but we get about 75,000 to 100,000 uniques, UVs a month, that kind of thing. It's not a ton, but even I, fight for awareness for the website. I do a thing every other week on Michigan radio to kind of do, I'll spotlight 4 or 5 shows. Sometimes we'll have actualities with directors or actors or playwrights to talk about the show.
Walk through the season. What does the season look like? I mean, in the fall, is it mostly when seasons are starting for a lot of these theaters?
Well, there's really 2 seasons. There's what I would call Labor Day to Memorial Day. Mm-hmm. Some theaters go dark in the summer, but they're replaced by theaters that only operate in the summer.
The outdoor, Shakespeare in the Park.
Shakespeare in the Park, but also the theaters that are in sort of resort areas.
Oh, sure.
So,
yeah. Up north.
Coldwater has the Tibbetts Opera House, and they have a full season. The Barn Theater in Holland is wonderful. The Mason Street Warehouse is another wonderful theater in Saugatuck. And the Thunder Bay Theater in Alpena, God love them, they operate year round.
Wow. So,
in December, I'm pretty sure they're putting on a show up there. So it's and Marine City is year round now, and that's a really good example of what a theater commitment can do to a downtown. Mm-hmm. The Riverbank Theater and the Snug Theater, which are owned, the Snug Theater is a black box theater. The Riverbank is in it's a high ceiling thing. It holds like 180 people. It's a converted bank. It was the building right on the water. But those theaters have re-energized downtown Marine City, and so there's a couple up there that have been putting money into it.
Why? What happens? So the theater goes in, and then restaurants open up to
restaurants. Yeah, people want to make a night of it. So it helps the area restaurant. I mean,
does theater move hotel rooms? Does it fill hotel rooms?
Marine City, because it's right on the water. I know that the same couple, the Vertons or their name, they've also opened up a small hotel there. Now, in Chelsea, the impact, the economic impact on downtown Chelsea by the Purple Rose Theater is big. It is very big, mm-hmm. because it keeps particularly like on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, it helps fill those restaurants for sure.
And bed and breakfast, people will go for a weekend.
Yeah. I think that's, I don't know. I think for Chelsea and some of these other towns, but that is not a huge part of it. But when you have Saugatuck and Holland and places like that, the summer theaters, it's they do a good business because people are there for weeks at a time, right? And whether or not the weather, it's part of the scene, mm-hmm. is to go to the theaters, go to the Saugatuck Arts Center.
Well, tell us about your new theater company.
Thanks. Yeah, so the Celtic, it's the Michigan Celtic Repertory Company, and we got our first production in December in Ann Arbor on the 8th and 9th. 8th is going to be at the Carytown Concert House, and the 9th will be at Connor O'Neill's, which is a bar and restaurant, and they have a performance space there too. It's a Child's Christmas in Wales, which is a classic piece written by Dylan Thomas, and our show was created out of the Dylan Thomas work by the New York Irish Repertory Company, and they've licensed us the show. And it's a beautiful show. The features it's adult children and their father who are getting together at Christmas to kind of reminisce about Christmases gone by, and it's very poetic because it's his writing is beautiful. It's prose, and then there's music that happens throughout the show, and the website for it is MichiganCelticRep.org, and you can follow details there. But I felt like I wear my Irish and Welsh. I'm half Irish, half Welsh heritage, and I wear it. I wear it proudly, including one tattoo each for each cultural. I won't tell you where it is, but where they are. But trust me on that.
Something somewhere where you have two of something. I'm presuming.
But we have a vibrant Irish American, Scottish American population in Michigan, and some Welsh, and so I'm hoping in 2019 that we're going to do some performing at the Gaelic League in Detroit. Talk to them about doing that. I have longer range hopes and aspirations of eventually having our own space in or around Corktown. Kind of working on that now.
Talking to Ford?
Well, the other part of my life is that I'm an automotive journalist. So I know a lot of people at Ford.
Right.
And the train station project is very interesting to me. The first time I went, and I heard that they're keeping the lobby space intact, as a public space. And I immediately started thinking about shows that could be performed in that space.
Definitely.
So as they get closer to opening, I'm going to see about and hopefully figure something out so we can perform something.
A live version of Batman versus Superman.
Oh, well, you're right.
I actually have a half an idea, and it's only half an idea right now, about doing a play that touches on when the Fords actually came from Cork into Michigan, or something about the Henry Ford's early days. A play. I mean, not just a recreation or reenactment kind of thing, but mining the material for a story
right.
that you could really focus on, that would make for a dramatic arc. So,
well, very cool. Yeah. And then when do the Wild Awards come up again?
Wild Awards are always the Monday before Labor Day. So, and we hold them at the Berman Center for Performing Arts in West Bloomfield, which is another place. If you love theater, if you love live performances, follow them on their website and their because they do all kinds of programming. They just had a show there. It was kind of a biographical play about the mamas and papas that came through. It was quite good, and
it's a beautiful facility there too.
It's great. I mean, they're very good. We have a partnership with them that goes back several years. So,
nice.
And with them, us, and Pride Source Media, between the lines. So we get to have our award show there, and they get advertising from between the lines. So,
all right, David, you ready to play a little game?
I'll do my best.
That's the best we can afford with our
our
on our budget. I know you're used to much better.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Let's start with this. Who is a Detroit playwright that everybody should know?
Josette Elmyra. He has written several plays. For example, he wrote one called The Gravedigger, which is kind of an adaptation, spin-off interpretation of the Frankenstein story that the Penny Seats did in Ann Arbor last summer. He's prolific. He must have written like 25 or 30 plays. But he's part of our community, and he also has his own theater company called Roustabout, and they're doing some lovely things too. So,
what would you say is the biggest misconception about theater in Metro Detroit?
Probably that it is that it's too expensive, because I think people who don't know about the breadth of smaller theaters, that's their impression. It's like, the tickets are whatever they are, $7,500 or more, per seat for a touring show. But, you can see wonderful shows at some of the theaters I've been talking about. Sometimes it's at will offering, like Theater Nova in Ann Arbor is at will. Other times it's $15, $20, $25 a ticket. So,
what's your favorite outdoor festival in Michigan?
Probably the Waterworks. In terms of festival, they do the Waterworks up in Royal Oak in the summertime. They do 2 Shakespeare plays and then like a non-Shakespeare play. Also, the Penny Seats in Ann Arbor does summer shows in West Park which is on 7th and Miller. And I confess, full disclosure, I played Cladwell in Urinetown with them before I took over the website.
Nice.
You mentioned the Purple Rose in Chelsea. If somebody's making the trip out there, is there a restaurant that you would recommend that they go to beforehand?
Yes, I really like Smokehouse 52. It's right there on Main Street. It's around the corner from the theater. But I love barbecue, so
I like barbecue too. Yeah. I'm not gonna argue with that.
There's another restaurant called the Common Grill across the street, which is also very good. I'm partial to the barbecue place.
How about turn into movies? What's your favorite Detroit set movie?
It's Gran Torino.
Oh yeah, good one.
I think I like Gran Torino because it hits on the sections of downtown that are so forlorn. And I like the story too.
Do you have a favorite Detroit restaurant?
I have 2. One is, and I hate to be conventional, but it's Roast because I really like Michael Simon's whole approach to cooking, and I can get sweetbreads and marrow bones at the bar sometimes after, which is a personal favorite. But I also want to give the Whitney props because I've been to the Whitney 3 or 4 times in the last 5 or 6 weeks, and the food is quite good. But what I really love is after a show, I love going to the bar upstairs and, they have some live performance, kind of thing going on. And they did something really cool recently where they had it was a ticket that got you dinner and it got you a live show of the Billie Holiday story. And wonderful actress who portrayed her. It's called Lady Day, and it's kind of based on one of her last performances at a Philadelphia bar. And it was a wonderful night. Food was great. The performance was great. It was absolutely worth it. And I love the atmosphere of the Whitney. I just love that old house and going up there and having a cocktail and listening to jazz.
Have you seen The Ghost?
I think I might have. He's in the next stall over from me in the men's room. There's just some strange sounds coming from him.
All right. Well, David Kiley, publisher and editor-in-chief of Encore Michigan, thank you so much for stopping by. This was absolutely fantastic. I learned a lot.
Thanks.
Me too, and I'm so glad to know that there's this one place you can go with a full-on calendar that organizes it all. There's something for everyone.
Yeah, give us the website again.
It's EncoreMichigan.com. Go every week to see something. You can also sign up on the website for a weekly newsletter that we send out that kind of makes it easier, so you don't have to remember to go. Something will pop in it's called Spotlight, and that'll pop in your mailbox, and you can open it or not. But we'll kind of give you the highlights, and then if you're Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and like that kind of thing, the Michigan Celtic Rep.org. That's my new theater company, and we'll be giving you some Christmas in Wales in December in Ann Arbor.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. We really appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right. Until next time, Detroit's moving.
Keep up.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.